Hi everybody, got a video for you today. We're going to show you how to change the servo in the car. I've had a few people ask about that are kind of new to RC, so we wanted to go over that so everybody understands that. So the servo's down inside of the car. You're going to have to take apart a few of the pieces on the car to get to it. So first thing, we're going to go ahead and use our tools that our aftermarket tools. This is a 1.5 millimeter hex driver. We got the 3 millimeter hex socket driver and the 4 millimeter. This just makes taking the car apart a little bit easier and quicker. So first thing you're going to want to do is take the hood off. And that's just going to be taking that screw off in the front, and then you're going to take the hood off. And you can see the servo right down inside of here. It's this black little box right here. This wire right here is the one that is the servo wire. So you can go ahead and disconnect that. Before you actually disconnect it, just look at, you got a white wire, a red wire, and a black wire. And there's a little symbol right here on the ESC and receiver unit to tell you how to plug that in. Make sure you don't plug that in backwards when you plug it in, because it will burn up the servo. So you just go ahead and unplug that, because you're going to have that unplugged. Next thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and take the rear tire off. And just pop that off there, and just be careful when you pop this off, if the hex comes with the tire, that you don't lose the little pin inside of here. Let's go ahead and set that aside. You're going to go ahead and pull the Nerf bar off on the left side, and these are just a friction fit, so you can just grab that and just pull it straight out, and it'll come right off. And then next thing, go ahead and take the screw out of the servo saver. And be careful, there's a spring and a plastic washer that are on that screw. So make sure you don't lose that, and just keep that together. Then you can just pull that off. Then you're going to take the front screw out of the body here. And then there's going to be one right down on the post here. And some of these screws are a little bit long, so they take a little bit to get out of there. And then you're going to have one up on the top of the cage here. And then there's going to be another one at the back of the cage. And one thing, when if you're going to work on the car quite a bit, you can use a cordless drill. If you have a cordless drill similar to this, if you have a hex driver bit that fits in there, it's a 1.5 millimeter. You can use these. We recommend you're okay using them when you take the car apart, but we don't recommend using them when you put it back together, just because the threads are really small. If you go too much, it'll strip those out. So you can use this. We'll use this to take out a few of these screws. You can see it makes taking it apart a whole lot easier. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is make sure you take this shock screw out at the back. And then you can just pull the shock down out of the way. And then that'll get you to this screw right at the back here. And again, make sure if you do use the cordless drill, you don't use it to put the car back together, because it'll strip those out pretty easy. So then you can take the 1.5 millimeter driver and just put it in underneath the radius rod right here, and just push up on it, and it'll pop that up. And then do the same with the front one right here. It'll pop that off. Then you're going to take the 3 millimeter driver, and you're going to take the 2 ball studs out on the side of the car, and just set those aside. And the car does come with an Allen wrench that you can use to do this if you don't have the optional tools. And there's a nut driver as well that'll take the rear wheel nut off, and then also take these ball studs off. So once you got all those out, the panel will be loose. Just kind of pull the panel by the header here, and you can just lift it up and it'll fall away. So the servo, again, is right down in here, and then you have this little gray piece that sticks off the servo. That's the back side of the servo saver. Now you're going to have to take that off to get the servo out of there. So if you just kind of grab onto the front and just kind of rock that back and forth a few times, it'll kind of work itself off the servo horn. If it doesn't come off right away, you can also use a pair of needle nose and just get down in there and just grab that and just easily just kind of rock it back and forth and pull out at the same time, and it'll just pop right off of there. And then just set that aside. And then to take the servo out, there's 2 screws down in here. There's one on this side of the servo, and then there's one kind of buried back inside of here. So you can use the driver to get back in here. And this one's a little harder to get to, just because it's kind of at an odd angle. But just take that out, and then what we recommend is when you take that out, just tip the car over like that, because there's a washer on these screws, so that way the washer and the screw, you won't lose that. And then just take the front one out. And once you get those two screws out, then the servo's loose. You can just pick up on the front side of the servo here, and then just lift it right straight out of the car. And there you go, and it's out. So then get your new servo. We're just going to use this one to put it back in. Just slide that back in there, and you're going to want to make sure that the post of the servo goes right between these cage bars right here. And then you're just going to take the two screws and put those back in, just like you took them out. And before when you get close to tightening these down, just leave them a little bit loose, because it makes it a lot easier to put the screws in when they're a little bit loose. So then you're going to put the back one in, and again, when you put the back one in, it's a little bit of an angle to get it in there. You can kind of tip the car sideways a little bit to get that one in there, get it started in a hole, run it down until it's almost tight. Now, one thing you can do, you'll notice the servo has a little bit of play front to back in it, and we left that in there for a reason, so when you go to optional servos, it's got a little bit more room. And also, if you end up on your radio where your steering trim is all the way maxed out one way or the other, when you go to this step, you can put the ball stud back in this front one and snap the front radius rod on. Go ahead and put all the servo saver stuff back on there. And you can then, if you are maxed out, you can move this front to back like this before you tighten the servo down. And then just tighten the servo down once you get it in the spot you want. And then we do recommend at this point, go ahead and plug the servo back in. Make sure again that you put the white wire on the right side of the car, and that's the S on this little symbol right here. We'll try to get a good shot of that. So this little symbol right here, it's an S and then a positive and a negative. So the S is the white wire, that's the signal wire, and then a positive and negative. Again, make sure you do not plug that in backwards, it will blow the servo up. So plug that in, hook your battery up, turn your radio on, make sure that the servo's centered, make sure your trim's centered, and then you're going to put this piece back on the servo. This is the back side piece that we took off. Now you're going to want to put that on where this thing's got like a V in it, and you're going to want the V going front to rear. So just like this, front to rear, and you get that on there, and you can see how, like, if you get this off, I'm going to purposely make it off like that. See how it's not on there straight, it's kind of at an angle. Use this to, it's kind of at an angle like this. Try to get a better shot of that for you. It's kind of hard to see that down in there. But you're going to want to get that straight as possible. And then, like I said, go ahead and hook that back up. Make sure that ball stud's in there. Snap that radius rod on. And make sure your steering is all straight. Make sure everything looks good. Make sure it's straight. If you need to adjust it, it's a lot easier to adjust it with this side panel off. Get it where you want. Make sure the servo's tightened down. Then you'll take this back off and take that ball stud back out, and then go ahead and put your side panel back on. When you put the side panel back on, it's the same way it came off. You'll just slide it down around the rear axle here, and then just slide it down around the front. Make sure your radius rods are out of the way. Slide that down on there. And what we always do is there's two spots. There's a little boss right here and a little boss right here that actually go up flush with the side panel. If you get those two located in down in there, it'll kind of hold that panel. And then we recommend put the ball studs in first. These are kind of the easiest thing, and they're spread out on the front and the back, so it's easy to put these in. So just put those in, run them down, make sure you don't over tighten anything, just get them so they're snug. And go ahead and put the front one in. And you're good to go. And then just put all the screws back in. Put this screw in first before you put the shock on, because it's really tight back there. Make sure you snap all the radius rods on. Make sure you put the steering servo saver back together. When you do put the servo saver back on, when you put this screw with the washer and the spring, make sure you don't over tighten this. If you over tighten that, it can strip the servo out, and that's a bad situation. You'll never keep the servo tight, and you'll have to get a new servo. So just put all the screws back in, put your Nerf bar back on, put your rear tire back on, and you're set to go. So that's everything you need to do. If you have any questions doing this, just hit us up on our email on our website or on our social media pages, and we'll get back to you right away. Make sure you keep watching our website and social media pages for new products coming out, and thanks for watching.